Oh my god! Doctor Who Flux is the biggest story in the show's history. It breaks such new ground. Have you ever heard of the show telling one long continuous story over the course of 6 weeks? What an ingenious idea! This has never happened before! Oh my god, fuck my brains out. Oh what? Were you honestly sat there thinking that I was going to waste the opportunity of having an episode about a time loop and not open by repeating a joke from my last video? You overestimate me! And are completely right to do so. Anyway, so Eve of the Daleks is the third in what is now a trilogy of New Year's Day Dalek specials. The first one is Daleks Do Body Horror, second one is Daleks Do a Civil War, and third one is Daleks Do a High Concept. So the Doctor, Yaz and Dan are in the TARDIS, which is recovering after whatever the shit was going on in Flux. And because the TARDIS isn't working properly, it creates a time loop in this storage warehouse place where Daleks have shown up because they're hunting the Doctor. And the Doctor and friends have to navigate the time loop while dying over and over again. So yeah, it's basically Doctor Who does Groundhog Day, which isn't exactly a rip-off. People are about to accuse it of that. They do reference Groundhog Day. A rip-off wouldn't point at the thing it's ripping off and call itself a rip-off. They do this in Happy Death Day as well, and really, Groundhog Day doesn't have a monopoly on time loops. It wasn't the first piece of media to do it, it was just the most popular. But now you have to acknowledge it whenever you do a time loop story, because whenever anyone sees a time loop, they immediately think Groundhog Day. Although I kinda wish Eve of the Daleks had been more of a rip-off of Groundhog Day, because unlike most time loop narratives, all of the characters on screen except for Pauline McGlynn are aware of the time loop, which completely surgically removes the thing that I find most interesting about time loop stories, the way that characters affected by the time loop interact with characters unaffected by the time loop and change their approaches to create different outcomes. If you take that out of the equation, it's not really a story about cause and effect anymore. It's a video game where our characters die and respawn with the knowledge that they had last go, and they try new things to move forward. Okay, fine, that can be interesting too, and it was interesting before when an episode did this exact same thing. It was called Heaven Sent. And Heaven Sent was this metatextual masterpiece about the Doctor running around a massive sprawling labyrinthine castle for thousands of years, repeating the same tedious battle over and over again, which is basically a commentary on the cyclical nature of the typical Doctor Who experience. Okay, yes, I do understand why Eve of the Daleks is a more palatable version of this story, because Heaven Sent's ultimate message to the audience is, I hate you! Why are you making me do this? Please stop watching now and let my suffering end. If Eve of the Daleks was going to act as a commentary on the cyclical nature of the general Doctor Who experience, the fact it swapped out the castle for a warehouse and some corridors and Daleks, and the Doctor spouting technobabble to her companions, does make it more relevant, yes. But the only problem is that beyond the first reset where our characters have to copiously explain what just happened, it doesn't really play with its high concept that much. The point of the high concept is that it allows the creative using it to play about with all the ramifications of it, but Eve of the Daleks has openly limited itself. The main point where you notice this is in this scene with our characters in a tight corridor facing a Dalek that's got a machine gun type attachment that fires off hundreds of rounds and conveniently misses every single shot while our characters escape into a room. And it's this scene that made everyone on Twitter start shouting at each other about plot armour. Okay, in a normal episode, yes, the tedious conversation that I would definitely not want to be involved in whatsoever would all be about the fact that the only reason our characters survive and the Dalek misses every shot is they would die and they're our main characters, so they kind of have to stay alive by default. And yes, these conversations are incredibly nitpicky and I hate them just as much as you do, but here's the weird thing about this scene. Our characters don't need to survive here. You've got a premise where they can die and reset, so why does the Dalek miss every shot then? Sigh. The plot armour argument is so stupid. If Indiana Jones got shot by the Nazis, there would be no story, would there? Duh. Yes, I know, and I agree with you. But if these characters get shot and killed here, there can be more story. So why not? Oh, but they can't keep dying over and over again because they only have a set amount of loops, because the loop gets smaller and smaller each time. Okay, fine, and that does give us some stakes, but in such an obvious situation in which our characters should die and don't, I just got stuck on the question of why there's even a time loop in this episode in the first place if Chris has given himself reasons to not play about with it. So the loop gets smaller and they get reset after they die and make some progress from the last loop, but if so, then it essentially is just a linear Doctor and companions run around corridors to outsmart the Daleks episode. Like, you've got a concept, why not use it? Oh, but they do use it, stupid. Everyone dies like 5 times. Yeah, I didn't say that they don't. I did watch the episode. I have eyes in my face. What I'm saying is, why not go overboard with something like this? Just believe me when I say this here, because I know this is a contentious point for people. I do not give a shit about the plot armor argument, so don't try and get me involved in it, alright? Not that that's going to stop anyone. The only reason that I'm bringing this up is the concept is the interesting bit, and I just don't understand why the episode's only allowed itself to play with it in a strictly regimented way. It's as if there's 5 set points in the episode where it's already been decided that our characters should die, where they just run into a Dalek, stop for a moment, and get shot. None of the events in the runtime feel spontaneous. The story's just very static and rigid. It's not wild and playful like time loop stories usually are. Really, I'm just struggling to understand how Chris's mind works. I swear I want to cut his brain open and dissect it and see how someone could arrive at such weird creative decisions. Okay, I understand saying that I want to cut open the brain of a Doctor Who showrunner could be a violation of YouTube community guidelines. Okay, for the record, that was hyperbole. It wasn't a genuine threat or some weird fetish. Oh, wait a minute. It definitely was not a genuine threat. Why'd you get so hung up on trivial details? Can't you just enjoy it for what it is? I didn't actually get hung up on this. It just broke my enthusiasm for the concept, that's all. It does say a lot when I think the most interesting thing in a high-concept episode is the incidental characters. Again, as what always happens whenever they cast people in light entertainment or comedians, I'm not sure if it's the fact that I already liked Aisling B, or if I genuinely like the character that she's playing, but I do love this exasperated, sick of all this shit energy that she gives the role. I was honestly way more interested in this unconventional drama of this guy Nick who rents out this warehouse space to store random items because he has a crush on this lady who works there. Really, Chris is much better at writing weird idiosyncratic characters that behave in completely unnatural ways than he is at high concepts. Anyway, so the other big talking point in the episode, which I know everyone is desperate for me to mention, it gets revealed that Yaz is in love with the Doctor. When we do the traditional Chris stops the episode to take her aside and go, "So how do you feel, Yaz? Now that we're in this warehouse being killed by Daleks over and over again, so how do you feel, Yaz? You okay?" I know there were Thasmin shippers prior to this, but it kinda came out of nowhere to me. I didn't see any build-up to this reveal. What did Dan see that I didn't? I mean, yeah, Yasmin talks about the Doctor a lot and was obsessed with finding her in Revolution of the Daleks while Ryan and Graham were busy moving on with their lives, but prior to this, there wasn't really any weaving of romantic intent. We didn't really get long, lingering looks that Yaz would give the Doctor implying longing, although I am typically oblivious to this shit, so any Thasmin shippers watching, feel free to lecture me on this point. I did like how they tied the fireworks into the story in an organic way. This is a warehouse full of weird, random, obtuse items, so the Doctor and friends use them to find a solution to fix the time loop and get rid of the Daleks that results in a firework display to go off at midnight on New Year's Eve. Ha! You see? I am capable of giving this thing compliments. Sigh. If stormtroopers could aim, there'd be no Star Wars. Maybe I'm stuck in a time loop. I do keep having to hear the same arguments about plot armor over and over again, no matter how many times I explain I don't think what people think I think. Maybe that's the point of this episode, to once and for all prove that time is cyclical. Every day is exactly the same. It reminds me of a depressing proverb that I made up just now. If one day is repeated endlessly, and everyone's aware of it, is it even really a time loop? Or is it just events?